Om Jnanatimandasyatsananslaslaka Sakshvamitam Yena Tasmai Shivave Namah Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinami Namaste Saraswata Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachaya Dasatana Srila Prabhupada Ki Namo. We will be reading today the first canto, chapter 5, text 34. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Evam Rinam Kriya Yoga Sarve Samsriti Hetava Ta Evatma Vinasaya Kalpante Kalpita Pare. Thus, when all a man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which caused his perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of work. I will now read the purport. So fruitive work which has perpetually engaged the living being is compared to the banyan tree in the Bhagavad Gita, for it is certainly very deeply rooted. As long as the propensity for enjoying the fruit of work is there, one has to continue the transmigration of the soul from one body or place to another. According to one's nature of work, the propensity for enjoyment may be turned into the desire for serving the mission of the Lord. By doing so, one's activity is changed into karma yoga, or the way by which one can attain spiritual perfection while engaging in the work for which he has a natural tendency. Here the word Atma indicates the categories of fruitive work. The conclusion is that when the result of all fruitive and other work is dovetailed with the service of the Lord, it will cease to generate further karma and will gradually develop into transcendental devotional service, which will not only cut off completely the root of the banyan tree of work, but will also carry the performer to the lotus feet of the Lord. Second paragraph. The summary is that one has to, first of all, seek the association of pure devotees, who not only are learned in the Vedanta, but are self-realized souls and unalloyed devotees of Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. In that association, the neophyte devotees must render a loving service physically and mentally without reservation. This service attitude will induce the great souls to be more favorable in bestowing their mercy, which injects the neophyte with all the transcendental qualities of the pure devotees. Gradually, this is developed into a strong attachment to hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, which makes him able to catch up the constitutional position of the gross and subtle bodies, and beyond them knowledge of pure soul and his eternal relationship with the Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead. After the relation is ascertained by establishment of the eternal relationship, pure devotional service to the Lord begins gradually developing into perfect knowledge of the personality of Godhead beyond the purview of impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma. By such Purushottam Yoga, as it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, One is made perfect even during the present corporeal existence, and one exhibits all the good qualities of the Lord to the highest percentage. Such is the gradual development by association of pure devotees. Read the verse once again. Evam nrinam kriya yoga sarva samsriti hetava daivatma vinasaya kalpante kalpita pare. Just when all a man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which cause his perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of work. So we see in this chapter that Narada Muni, as a demonstration on how the influence of devotional service affected him in his previous life, tells his life story. And his life story is a powerful demonstration of the process of bhakti. This lesson is mainly concerned with the effect of the association of devotees, the power of hearing Krishna Katha from them, and the teachings of the universality of Srimad Bhagavatam. So pure devotee is as much infectious, in a good sense, as infectious diseases. Srila Prabhupada glorifies the efficacy of association with pure devotees in his purport to text 25 of this chapter. So we need to understand the importance of hearing Krishna Katha by understanding the effects that Krishna Katha has on us. And the effects it had here in the story of Narada Muni. So Narada Muni shares confidential knowledge, we have heard. That confidential knowledge refers to the Chaturshloki of the Bhagavatam. Chaturshloki, that everything comes from the Lord. He existed before and will exist only after the annihilation of the creation. And everything that we see separate from him, that's called illusion, because nothing is separate from him. Because he is a person, a transcendental person, in the spiritual world, and at the same time, he's also the cosmic manifestation, but is also different from them, from the cosmic manifestation at the same time. And it is the goal of life to search for the Supreme Lord in all ways possible. That's the Chaturshloki. That's this confidential knowledge. Because if one understands this knowledge, then one comes to one's constitutional position. Shiveras Rupahoy, Krishna Nityadas. We are originally, the soul is a servant of the Supreme Lord. But if we don't serve Krishna, then our actions are self-centered actions. And these actions cause bondage. But actions to give pleasure to Krishna gives us liberation. And that we hear in how to do that in this verse of today. Therefore, this verse is very important. But it starts, as we heard in verse 32, with constant hearing about Krishna is the best spiritual process. Because if one hears, then one will dedicate everything to the Lord's service. And one becomes spiritually advanced instead of materially entrapped. So this message of Srimad Bhagavatam is a universal message. So we hear in this chapter how efficient, how powerful the association is with pure devotees. Association with pure devotees removes all obstacles which prevents one to enter devotional service. If we hear as neophytes, we become enriched with the transcendental qualities of the pure devotees. And one gets a taste for pure devotion when one hears. Everything material becomes distasteful. All this happens by hearing about Krishna, and it happened to Narada Muni. What were the effects on Narada Muni's life that we heard in the previous verses? So his taste for hearing increased at every step. He realized that in his ignorance he accepted gross and subtle bodies. Gross and subtle bodies. We accept gross and subtle bodies by not seeing Krishna, by thinking, this is mine and for my enjoyment. I'm the center of existence. Then, one contacts the material energy, contacting the material energy yes. So the coverings of the modes of passion and ignorance, the coverings of our consciousness, started to be removed. And Narada became, just by hearing, gentle in behavior, that he controlled his senses. And he followed his Bhaktivedanta with body and mind. Now, that's what we heard before. What did we hear in the previous verse? That it is Narada Muni who brings up an analogy. O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing? Srila Prabhupada in the purport speaks about this body is a bad bargain, but we can use it in relation with the Supreme Spiritual Being. And the philosophy regarding this previous verse is mentioned in this verse that we just read. I read it again. Thus, when all a man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which cause this perpetual bondage become the destroyer of tree of work. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada said, gradually, this is developed in a strong attachment to hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, which makes him able to catch up the constitutional position of the gross and subtle bodies. So this constitutional position is that we are servant, but influenced by the mode of passion and ignorance, by the desires from our previous lives. These desires not to serve Krishna, and to engage in selfish activities is stored within our subtle and gross body. It is stored there, and this is our karma. Our karma, this body we got by the desires we developed previous lives, and they are still stored in our subtle and gross body. And they are covering our consciousness that at the end of the 4th canto, Narada Muni will instruct King Prachinabarishad, and he will explain that quite deeply there. But today I would like just to make us aware that this pure consciousness, Shivere Swarupa Hoy Krishna Nityadas, that's our pure consciousness. We know the symptom of the soul is consciousness. You cannot remove consciousness from the soul. That's not possible. But we have to remove these coverings, and these coverings are the gross body and the subtle body, which we don't need. So to become aware of that, we have to change our inner attitude. And like in the 3rd canto, in the 6th chapter, there we have Maitreya Muni speaking to Vidura. And he says to Vidura, we must have chaste consciousness. That's interesting, chaste consciousness. Our consciousness is not chaste. So that word chaste, like for a woman to be unchaste to her husband is the worst thing. In the Shastra, it is mentioned that women and children and old people are never punishable, even if they do something that is very wrong. But if a woman is unchaste, then that is considered the worst thing. So by describing the power of, so by describing our selfish actions, that we speak about things not related to Krishna, we should use our speaking power only to execute the order of the spiritual master. That is chaste. But when all our faculties, what we have, which is speaking, very important, and hearing, that if it's not engaged in the service of the Lord, it's considered to be unchaste. And there Maitreya Muni is making a very strong statement. This is a very bad thing, he said. It has to be avoided at all costs. So, as Srila Prabhupada, he makes that point. It's not sufficient that we want to avoid unchasteness. No, it's not simply solved by trying to avoid activities. And we see that also in this verse of today, that one must work One must be active. But work has to be done for the satisfaction and for the mission of the Lord. That's Bhakti Yoga. We cannot avoid. A person will say, yes, you avoid it. To avoid the manifestation of consciousness by going into an unconscious state. And you see that also many people do that in this today's society. They like to sleep and they take intoxications. And they think, now I'm acting nicely because I gave up my activities. So they think, yeah, I'm not doing activities. I cannot be accused of doing something wrong. But Srila Prabhupada makes a point that one may give up conscious activities for some time, but the soul is always conscious. Always. And that's a point I want to develop today. We can understand that more deeply. The symptom of the soul is consciousness and cannot be it cannot be removed consciousness. So even if you take intoxications, after some time, your consciousness will come back. And it will not be so pleasant. It's just a question of a little time. But then Srila Prabhupada writes, one's consciousness will act again unearnestly. So consciousness is an eternal quality of the soul. And it is an essential part of the structure of the soul. Of course, the soul has no material structure, but by means of speaking. It is an eternal characteristic of the soul, and it can never be removed. It will always be there. You can't really achieve unconsciousness. Srila Prabhupada explains this in the purport, how consciousness is a symptom of life. If consciousness apparently becomes inactive, but it is impossible. It is impossible. It is an eternal part of the nature of the spirit soul. And Jiva Goswami gives a very nice description on how consciousness is acting always. Even if one appears to be unconscious, one is not unconscious. It describes that consciousness acts on 3 levels. 3 levels. In the material world, on 3 levels, we know consciousness. Waking, sleeping, deep sleep. Jagrati, Svapna, Susupti. When one is in the wakeful state, then consciousness is manifest in the body. And we are perceiving so many things through seeing, touching, tasting, smelling, hearing. So consciousness is manifest when we are awake. But when we are sleeping, then our consciousness is not manifest. We are not longer aware of what we are feeling, but still, while we are sleeping, we are in contact with the body. There may be things to be seen around us, but our consciousness is not functioning or manifest on that platform. But our consciousness is manifest. It's manifest on the platform of the subtle body. At least on the platform of the mind. Then we dream. Most nights we dream something. And it is not uncommon at all when you wake up and you remember, you think, I dreamt of this, I dreamt of that. When we are sleeping, we are in gross ignorance. Very deep ignorance. Dreams are generally quite confused. When you are in deep ignorance, then everything becomes very strange. Everything becomes very distorted on the mental platform. Even while sleeping, although our consciousness is not manifest on the gross body platform, our consciousness is manifest on the mental platform. But when we are in deep sleep, then no longer dream. Sometimes it may happen in the morning after we have been in very deep sleep that we feel refreshed. You don't remember any dreams. You may fall asleep and suddenly you wake up, several hours have passed and you can't remember, but you feel very refreshed. So that is the subtle deep sleep. In deep sleep, the consciousness is also withdrawn from the subtle body. So there's no dreams. There are no dreams. There's no consciousness. Actually, there is no consciousness we are aware of. Because we are only aware of our gross and subtle bodies. We are not really perceiving our own spiritual nature. When the consciousness is withdrawn from the gross body and the subtle body, then as conditioned soul, we are not aware where our consciousness is situated at that time. So in deep sleep, there is also consciousness. But what is that consciousness? In the wake state, we cannot remember it. But Jiva Goswami explains that at that time, when you are in deep sleep, the consciousness is situated in itself, or consciousness is situated in the soul. And that, because consciousness is being part of the nature of the soul. So we are conscious of the soul, but we are not conscious of anything of this world. Therefore, when you wake up from deep sleep, you feel refreshed. Because you have been on the platform of the soul. And you feel very good. Then one thinks, I slept very well. So Jiva Goswami says that this pleasant feeling that I slept very well and things are very nice, he says that is a type of recollection of being situated on the spiritual platform. Of the consciousness being situated on the level of the soul, free from the interference of the gross and the subtle body. The consciousness of the soul can be considered something like Brahman realization. And you wake up and you feel refreshed, you feel nice, you think, oh, I slept well. The idea that I slept well is a type of recollection, remembering. It means that consciousness is there, having been situated on the platform of the soul. Because the fact is that consciousness is always there. Consciousness cannot be switched off. When you have a switch and I put it off. It is just a matter of where it may be placed. Either on the platform of the gross body and the subtle body, or on the platform of only the subtle body, or on the platform of the soul. These are different platforms. Srila Prabhupada says that actually Brahman realization means to be completely free from the gross body, completely free from the subtle body, and simply being situated on the platform of the soul. And that is what one achieves when one is in deep sleep. Of course, we are not encouraging everyone to go into sleeping. No. We want to have some sort of spiritual experience. We, however, must realize that this experience is still coming to us through the modes of material nature when we are awake. This is why when you wake up, you don't feel intense ecstasy. which is actually there when one realizes Brahman. This is just some vague feeling of well-being. Because in deep sleep, we are on the spiritual platform, but still covered by the mode of ignorance. One way or other, the consciousness will act. Sometimes people ask, because we say that the soul is always conscious, if someone hits you on the head and you fall unconscious, then afterwards you can't remember what happened. You are not aware where you were and what is going on. All it means is that consciousness is withdrawn from the body. That's what it means. And it may be even withdrawn from the mind, subtle body, depending on how deeply one goes in a state of material unconsciousness. But the soul is always conscious. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada makes the point that in order to avoid unchaste consciousness, not to avoid material consciousness, it is not enough just to switch off or try to switch off our conscious function, but we have to engage our consciousness in a very nice way, in Krishna consciousness, and that's explained how to do that in this verse. It's like a summary. Because we will see that our consciousness always acts again. That it means it will act always in a determined and positive way, in a way that you can't stop. So we have to avoid unchaste consciousness by always 24 hours engaging in devotional service. And that's here called karma yoga. And 24 hours means that before you take rest, you should read one chapter or some pages of Krishna book, the pastimes of Krishna. Then at night, you may dream about Krishna. Devotees who had a lot of association with Srila Prabhupada, they would sometimes watch him, and when Srila Prabhupada would so-called sleeping, even while sleeping, Srila Prabhupada his lips would move and chant the Hare Krishna mantra. So he was fully Krishna conscious. So we need to practice this karma yoga and practice hearing about Krishna's Narada Muni, but also speaking about Krishna. After hearing, you must speak. Srila Prabhupada said, I've no good qualities, but I've one good spiritual quality. I like to hear. So that will make us advanced, his attraction to hearing. And after hearing, speaking, Srila Prabhupada said, now I can speak nicely because I was hearing nicely. So we have the power of speech, and that power is very strong. It is the strongest of the senses. In Nectar of Devotion, we hear Srila Rupa Goswami says, Atashi Krishna Namadi Navavatchaim Indriyam Sevamukhi Ijivata Svamivas Pratyada. Because Krishna's form, his qualities, his pastimes, they're all on the absolute platform, and material senses cannot appreciate them. But when a conditioned soul is awakened to Krishna consciousness and starts rendering service to the Supreme Lord by his tongue, with the tongue means chanting Hare Krishna, tasting Krishna Prasad, then the tongue is purified and gradually one comes to understand who Krishna really is. So we must make an effort to make our consciousness chaste. And then all these material infections, they will go. And we will situate it in our original position, our original consciousness as a servant of Krishna. And that's by 24 hours a day, engaging oneself in the service of Krishna. So this chapter gives us the essence, how to advance, hear from pure devotees, and then follow their instructions. Thus chaste consciousness, always following the instructions of the spiritual master. And then our consciousness will become purified. And we'll understand. We will come to the consciousness of the soul without going in deep sleep. And with deep sleep, we can say is temporary liberation, that we go beyond. And then these desires stored in our gross and subtle body will be removed. And once these desires are removed, then we don't take birth again. But that's the process, that how to perform that process is summarized here in that one sentence. All one's activities should be dedicated to the service of the Lord. And then we will cut off our attachment and our consciousness will be pure. No identification anymore with the subtle and gross body. No ahankar. So that is the process which is explained here. Purushottam Yoga in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna explained the same there. He says that there is the infallible and the fallible. And I'm the Purushottam, I'm above the fallible and infallible, but I maintain them. So that awareness that we are all part and parcel of Krishna, and our purpose is Haritoshanam, pleasing him with our activities, and that's karma yoga. So, stop here. Any comments or questions, please?
Thank you very much, Maharaj. A nice explanation. Maharaj, the 3 levels of consciousness, you mentioned about waking, sleeping, and deep sleep. Is that correct understanding?
These are 3 levels of material consciousness. Because beyond, there is the Turiya, the transcendental consciousness. And that means developing love for Krishna, acting out of love for Krishna. That is beyond liberation. That's pure devotional service. Mm-hmm.
And just I'm trying to confirm my understanding, Maharaj. So waking, we have body and soul both conscious, not soul, sorry, subtle body, gross and subtle, both conscious. Then in sleeping, subtle is conscious, or active. And then deep, both are inactive.
Yeah, one is disconnected with the subtle and the gross body. Not completely. Because when someone who is in deep sleep and you start to shout him, he will come out. There is a very fine connection still. But sometimes it happens that you are completely connected. That examples are like when when you have an operation and you are under anesthesia, then you are completely disconnected with the body,
Yes.
with the gross and the subtle body. Completely disconnected.
Yes.
But when one comes, I went in such an operation. When I came out of the operation, first, there's a part that I don't want to speak about, but first when you come out of narcos, then the first thing is you become aware of the subtle body. And then after that, the gross body. So first, the consciousness feels against the subtle body, and then the gross body. But the point is, if during such an operation you are disconnected, and later you are connected again, it means that we are not a body. Try to understand this. That this is very important. This is the proof that we are not a body. That you can connect and disconnect. If someone faints, can also be disconnected.
Yes.
So that we are the consciousness within the body, but it's polluted now. That we are thinking this life of the body is everything. When I came to Krishna consciousness, I must say that I understood after some years, it took a while, I understood for the materialist, that is reality. Because everything what they think they are will go. For them, it's reality. But for a devotee, this life of the subtle and gross body is a life of temporary illusion. But we use it in the Krishna service. And by that, the illusion goes. And that's what sets in. We learn to use it in Krishna's service. Like the previous verse, Narada Muni said, a thing applied therapeutically can cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing. So we know that science, how to do that. By that we destroy the gross and subtle body forever. And we are in our spiritual body. And that's what we are doing. That's confidential knowledge. Even psychologists, they cannot get that point. They are really thinking. They don't understand this point. But the devotee understands. If you practice devotion service for many years, then that understanding is common. Does that help?
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Good.
Nice. And one more question about Maharaj. Nicely, you explained about, constant hearing is the best. Constant hearing about Krishna is the best spiritual practice, and also our current life, our gross body, is our result of our previous body, and our desires also are connected with our past karma. So Maharaj, many times what happens, lack of association, or for other situations, many times devotees don't get motivation, or there is a letharginess or laziness comes because we take it Krishna consciousness little casual. So Maharaj, is that also connected to the desire and past karma?
Yes, sure. It is because these desires, all these plans that Because the point is, this is explained in the fourth canto, the story of Puranjana. Puranjana becomes in his next life a wife, Puranjani. and it's due to unchaste consciousness. That and how does it manifest in next life? Because in desires, your karma is stored in the desires. And we don't desire to serve Krishna. We desire something else. That's the problem. That so many desires besides Krishna. And we are absorbed in these desires. And we don't have any taste. And Lord Chaitanya says that also. And that I think I was just working on that today. Lord Chaitanya. Yeah. It's yeah. Namnama karu baudanya sarva saktis tatraptanya mates marane nakala etadvisita pakeva paravan mamapi tu devam itrisam iajanu nanuraga. So Lord Chaitanya said, yeah, you have put all your potencies in the holy name, but unfortunately, I iajanu nanuraga. I have no anuraga. I have no affection for these holy names. I have other desires in my mind. So, therefore, Krishna is very affectionate to us, but we cannot reciprocate because desires are in the way. And we want something else than Krishna consciousness. This is our conditioning. These desires. And these desires is our karma. And they are obstacles. In order to remove them, hearing like Narada Muni. And continuously hearing. These desires are so strong that it can take 40, 50 years of hearing, but you will get rid of that if you are determined that after 10, 20 years, or even 10 years, the gross desires go away. But then the subtle desires, that's much more difficult. The cleansing of the Gundicha temple first, the gross cleansing all the dust, but then cleansing with water, so many pots, and it's more difficult. That's especially, yeah, that the puja, pratishta, that desire for honor, worship, distinction. If someone says something bad to us, we feel bad and disturbed. That's all a symptom of this. By that, if you feel disturbed, you can understand, yes, by this, these desires are there, which are keeping me in this world and apart from Krishna. This is called anarthas, technically. There are so many anarthas, but how to remove them starts with hearing like Narada Muni. Does that help?
Yes, Maharaj. So, Maharaj, also the unmotivated, lifestyle or lethargy, that also connects to the karma, then, Maharaj. If somebody is lazy or lethargic, they already have opportunity, but then it is not happening. They are not taking the advantage of that opportunity of Krishna consciousness or hearing or doing devotional service.
Lazy or being lethargic is the influence of the mode of ignorance. That is, very deep. The mode of ignorance. And we have to, we have a desire to sleep. We have a desire to enjoy, desire to drink alcohol and intoxications. And that, this is the mode of ignorance. We want to kill the consciousness that our feeling of guilt, that because we are not the enjoyer, and we try to enjoy someone else's property, the property of Krishna, and we want to enjoy in the most easy way. But the material world is so constructed that all enjoyment will lead to suffering. It's only suffering, really. But we are so deep in illusion, we think, oh, why? We become lethargic because, and we become lazy because we think it will not work out. I want to try to achieve this, but it will not work out, or it's not worthy to do all this. That it's all due to the influence of ignorance. It's a sign of deep ignorance. That, because we have expectations. So many expectations. But the expectations will not work out. We should be concerned with what are Krishna's expectations. That an act out of duty and be very enthusiastic in it. But yes, laziness, that has no place in Krishna conscious activities. That from the moment Arjuna heard Bhagavad Gita, he gave it all up, and he was ready to fight. He got the knowledge that burned away his ignorance. Teshame van de Kampatama Magyana Chamtama Nasa Jama Bhava, Gyana Tipe, Teshame van de Kampatama Magyana Chamtama Nasa Jama Atma Bhavastu, Gyana Tipena Ashita. With the torch of knowledge, Krishna removes our ignorance. If we earnestly hear about Krishna like Narada Muni, then it will go away. So if one is in such a state, one should hear and hear more. That not only working, hearing sufficiently. So important. That's a struggle sometimes, especially like a manager. You have to manage your time that you also can read and delegate as much as possible. Don't try to give yourself unlimitedly. It's not possible. Then we become like the politicians. Srila Prabhupada said about the politicians, he spoke about an important politician in India, and he was dying, and he was thinking, without me, nothing will go here. They depend on me. But after he passed away, everything went as before. Nothing happened. So we have to be balanced in what we do. That and have also time for hearing. That's important. Does that help?
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah, very much, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Because then we see next week. Next week, I have